Thank you all for coming. We are about to begin our press conference. It is going to be addressed by Comrade Ambassador Mchangwa, and I'll hand you over to him now.
Thank you, gentlemen and gentlewomen of the press. As usual, we start by saluting the fact that you could come to our headquarters, the headquarters of the permanent Zimbabwe Revolution, to hear the progress which is being made by our leader, Comrade President Dr. Emmerson Mnangagwa, in the handling of national affairs, in the handling of, first in the handling of party affairs, secondly in the handling of national affairs, and the geopolitical impact which he is beginning, which is beginning to gather pace as his policy of engagement and re-engagement crescents, and also as his mantra, enemy to none, friend to all, begins to take root in the interaction of Zimbabwe at both bilateral and the multilateral level. Clearly, an emerging statesman of stature on the global stage. So we are happy that you are here today in your numbers, and we never take it lightly that you could be elsewhere. You probably would be invited by our opposition, but we have not seen them ever doing something similar to what we do here. It looks like they are running out of steam, which is as it should be. So when you come here, we don't take it lightly. We also believe that as patriots, you take our message seriously. That's why you pay more attention to us. The People's Party Conference of ZANU-PF will be held next month. The party leadership under the Secretary General, under the Chairman, National Chairperson of the party, Comrade Opa Mchinguri Kashiri, as well as the Secretary General, Comrade Obet Mpofu, they have been very busy working on this party conference. One thing you can be sure of is that ZANU-PF is a part of organization. Organization is in our DNA. We owe it to history. It's a product of our historical march since the 1960s, when the National Liberation Movement was born in Zimbabwe. So because of that appetite for organization, we promise you a very, very successful National People's Conference. And there's already a lot of excitement by our membership. I think you can see the debate which is going on within the party. People vociferously expressing their views on different aspects of the party. And in this instance, we are a democratic party. We always remind people that when a nation purposely sacrifices lives so that it could become Zimbabwe again, these are people who made conscious decisions. And conscious decisions belie that they are being made in a democratic manner. So the ethos of democracy is ingrained in our history of the struggle. We made democratic decisions to sacrifice and paid a heavy price for that. So in this vein, we very much, as the party, welcome the robust debate which is going on across a variety of issues. And we promise a very lively conference, but at the same time, a conference which will see the party being accounted for by its membership as to how it is delivering the Zimbabwe which the Zimbabweans want. This is what will be at that conference. We are determined to restore prosperity and glory to the people of Zimbabwe. This is the focus of that conference, and the mantra, the motto, everything will revolve around that aspect of growing the economy, delivering prosperity, and restoring the glory of this country. I never cease to remind that in sub-Saharan Africa, the testament to what Zimbabwe has been in the past, you just need to go to Masvingo, you just need to go to Danamombe, you just need to go to Kami in Bulawayo, and 200 other great Zimbabwe, starting with Mapungubwe in South Africa, which is part of our civilization. So we go back a long way. So when we aspire to glory, it's only answering to what we have been in history, and we'll be making allusions to that as we go on. So this is the People's Conference. Right now we are much more focused on the organization of it, but I've also mentioned on the robust debate which is going on within the party about the performance of the party and about the future direction of the party, with people aspiring, expressing what they would wish the party to be. What we can assure you, of course, of the democratic ethos, we never muzzle debate in ZANU-PF. We don't muzzle debate. We allow the full flower of the people's views. But at the end of the day, the party will then take a considered view, and the president and his Politburo will chart a way forward which always ensures continuity to the party of prosperity which he has charted since 2017 with the Second Republic and Operation Restore Legacy. This is SADC, and in the same vein, I want to say the new American ambassador seems to be hitting the right buttons. Our president authorized our acting president to make sure that he meets with the new American ambassador because of his schedule was in China, so that we can take the relations between Washington and Zimbabwe to another level. And just yesterday, the same ambassador, Ambassador Pamela Tremont, was meeting our Minister of Women Affairs, SMEs, and Community Development. This is a good thing. Our president has always said we are an enemy to none and a friend to all. And we are there to engage with our historical partners, but also to re-engage with those who may not have seen eye to eye with us over certain periods. It's normal, it's inevitable in the course of history that you have disagreements along the way, but eventually people have to find each other out. So we see the signs coming from the American ambassador of engaging with Zimbabwean political leadership and government leadership as a good thing. By the way, I had the pleasure of receiving the chargé d'affaires at ZANU-PF headquarters last year. This is a good thing. We are very happy. We never made America be what it is. They hold an inordinate sway in every aspect of human socio-economic endeavor. And there's just so much which Zimbabwe can gain by just being on the right side with America. And our president has given instructions to that effect. Yes, President Mbeki the other day, he made reference to the role of the third force during the riots against foreigners in South Africa, the xenophobic riots. We are very happy that the liberation movement, of which I made an allusion to earlier, is bring out the truth that all these things, they never look as simple as the opposition at home would like us to believe. There was a third force. And the third force hankers to the past, when the West was the dominant player on the African continent. We don't need to constantly remind of slavery, colonialism, partition of Africa, and the neo-colonial project in Africa. So when he speaks of a third force, these are the elements at play. But look, it's good that the history is coming out. It is also a call upon our local opposition to say, rinemanyanga hariputirwi. Zvinozongobuda chete zvamaita. More so when the people behind the third force shift their geopolitical and diplomatic positions. The truth is coming out because there is no more interest probably in the West, in Washington, in London, in Paris, in Brussels, and in Berlin. There's no more interest to continue to pursue the same path. There may be no more interest. So when paradigms shift, the waters expose what had been happening in the past. When the riverbed shifts, you see what has been going on in the past more clearly. But it vindicates what we ZANU-PF have always what? Have always said. But that as it may, we are much more focused on the present. We have no reason to dwell to the gripes of the past about what was done to us. It arrests our progress. As you know, our president never looks into the rear view mirror, our president. He looks always in the windshield as to where we are going. That's why in all the First Republic changes which has gone on, there has never been an effort at trying to settle scores by our president. He says there are 24 hours in a day, and all those 24 hours I devote them to the progress of Zimbabwe. If I start looking at setting scores, then I take some time off the 24 hours and I look through the rear view mirror, and then it distracts my attention away from the task at hand. So we are not going to be dwelling on who said what among the big powers during that period of time. We are more focused on the fact that they want to embrace Zimbabwe, and these are powerhouses, these countries. They are investment partners, they are technology partners, they are also markets which we need for our people as they carve out a new role as a major production center on the African continent in a variety of ways. So when you begin to be productive, you focus on things which make sure that you have access to the market. And trying to revive old grudges is not a way we develop markets. And I want to assure you, I sometimes can be quite generous in my wording on many issues, but the president, from the day he gave me this job, he says we are there to make friends regardless of what may have happened in the past with the big powers. We have no reason to perpetuate gratuitous quarrels with big centers of power on the global stage. We are only 16 million Zimbabweans. We are in the center of Africa. We are land-linked because we are landlocked. So we are land-linked. We thrive on the base of relations with our neighbors. We also thrive on the base of relations with everybody on the global stage, regardless. So we will not be enamored to our past. We are definitely focused on the future, and the president's diplomacy on the global stage to date attest to that. So welcome on board America, welcome on board South Korea. The president was recently in South Korea for a South Korea-Africa summit. It is the VAG, it is the VOG, it is the VAG also, where everybody wants to be associated with Africa. Every major institutional, every major economic power wants to be engaged with Africa. The Chinese started it in 2000 when nobody thought it fashionable. At that time when African leaders went to Western capitals, you would be lucky to see a junior official in foreign ministry. But now African leaders are being hosted in summits in every capital of consequence on the global stage. This is a good thing for Africa, to be in the limelight. So the president was invited to South Korea. Japan had its triggered summit just a few weeks ago. Our foreign minister was there. Indonesia just had its own Africa summit. Our vice president and the Minister of Women's Affairs were dispatched by the President to attend to that summit. So this is a good thing for Africa, that there just is so much attention to it. And China, of course, made it a point of also hosting the much more glorious African summit recently in Beijing. Look, they've been doing it now since 2010. Since 2000. It's 24 years of China-Africa diplomacy. So it's within their stride. They know it. They've done it more than anybody else. So they really put on a good show in Beijing. And the beauty about the attendance was that some of the countries which the West have always tried to be their closest friends in Africa, they were all at the high table in Beijing. So Africa is coming of age. I will remind you what was asked to President Ruto when he was in Washington. He was asked, where are you between China and America, between Beijing and Washington? He says, I'm looking straight. I'm not looking sideways. I'm not looking east. I'm not looking west. I'm looking forward. Because forward is where the best opportunities lie. That was a very profound statement. It is very much reflected in what went on in Beijing. The Chinese have made a big technological breakthrough, a big manufacturing breakthrough in many fields of human economic activity. Very pamberi. I think if you look at who is the top trading partner of number 1 to number 50 countries in the world, all of them put China as number 1 as a trading partner. So you can understand the manufacturing prowess which satisfies this appetite by the global stage of Chinese manufactured goods on behalf of every company of every capability in the whole world. The Fortune 500 companies are all in China. So they are making strides, and the beauty about it is that this is something which is happening before our eyes. When you look at the progress which America made, it's historical. When you make with the progress which Europe made for Africa, it's historical. You always are tempted to think that that's how things were. But when you look at the progress which China is making now, it's happening before our eyes. It gives us added impetus, added agency, added motivation to say if the Chinese can make it, we also can make it. So it was very interesting. As a revolutionary party, ZANU-PF, the president took us through the steps of history to be where we are today. And it is very befitting that maybe as the part of the permanent revolution of Zimbabwe, we take our caps off to a Zimbabwean national chairman of ZANU at that particular time, Herbert Chitepo. He was invited by the late president of Nyerere, because he didn't have lawyers in Tanzania when Tanganyika became independent, to become his director of public prosecutions. At the same time, he was deployed by the party to work for ZANU in Dar es Salaam. He is the one who forged that relationship with China and the China Communist Party through the good offices of President Nyerere. When China was still a very poor country, hardly a decade out of its own independence and struggle against the imperialism. We were at the forefront of the fossil fuel manufacturing promise in Africa in the 1960s when the Federation was formed. The American and Western companies wanted to make Zimbabwe the headquarters of vehicle manufacturing. Takakura tichinzi paane motor vainzi Ford Motor Company. This is where we were aspiring to be, those huge factories. Unfortunately, our national politics went wrong. Federation collapsed. UDI came with Smith defying the world. We were forced into a war by Ian Smith. President Samora Machel had to close the border in 1976 because we were now in a war. We became independent. The Western countries still did not want Mozambique and Zimbabwe to thrive together. They sabotaged all the railway communications through Mozambique, and we were forced to go to South Africa. Along the process, the whole car manufacturing industry moved to South Africa. Zimbabwe was left with shells of factories. Now, with this advent of the paradigm shift from fossil fuels to new energy electric vehicles, we have another striking chance at becoming a major center of global auto vehicle production. You go back to what I started off with earlier on. There is purpose in why I started with what's happening in the mineral sector. We can see the opportunity where Zimbabwe is. In car racing, it means overtaking at the bend in car racing. We may just have a striking chance of overtaking at the bend and become the new center of new energy electrical mobility. After all, we already have a steel plant still being produced by the top private sector company in the world in terms of technology. By the way, China has surpassed everybody else, not only in the production of steel, but in the technology for the production of steel. The Japanese used to be kings. Now they are beginning to pay respects to the science of the research and development which China has done in steel, the Japanese. Nippon Steel now says the Japanese and the Chinese are a force. So when we have Manise and we have Chinese steel technology, we are having the best possible steel products being made in Zimbabwe by Zimbabweans for the global market. You combine the steel, you combine the new energy electric vehicles, which I alluded to earlier on, you see the possibilities. And this is what our president was looking at when he visited China. So it was beyond a nostalgic visit about his past as a young revolutionary scouring the globe looking for support. He's looking for the promise of the future. And for another decade in Zimbabwe to have a leadership which spans so many decades of our struggle, of which the culmination of which is the quest for prosperity. Because that's what this whole struggle was about. Can Zimbabwe be given a chance to become prosperous? The president is hitting all the right chords on this particular instance. So this is good. There was also an SME, the Chinese, they have a template which has proven that it works. When you can move people out of poverty, 500, 600 million people out of poverty in 3 decades, it's not something which you should look down at. Nobody has done it in the history of humanity. So on Sunday, we expect, I think, 30,000 Zimbabwean youths. They will descend on Masvingo, the great citadel of the Mulumutapa king, of the Shona kings, the great Zimbabwe civilization. This is a reminder of the history which Zimbabwe has come. Earlier on, I told you of the history of the party. There is another aspect to the history of the party which I had left, which is the Soviet dimension, where, because we gave the world 2 liberation movements, the other wing of ZANU-PF took advantage of the Russian people's march to progress, particularly the decision by Russia in 1917, after the Bolshevik Revolution, to make modern arms available to other countries other than Europe. I always remind that the most important clause of the Berlin Conference was the cartelization of arms against other continents by Europe, modern arms. Zvikanzi tachiwana chinopfuura uri kure, vamwe vane mapfumo nemiseve, hapana anofanira kunge vachizochiwana chombo ichochi. And one of the consequences of that decision at the 1884 Berlin Conference was the banning of Portugal from supplying arms to the African people, and the West affected with the people of Zimbabwe. Suddenly, the Shona kingdoms, which had been powerful for all these years, had no source of modern armaments. That's why ana mashaya mombe vakarohwa. That's why ana Lobengura vakarohwa. That's why ana Chingaira vakarohwa. Because they could not get new weapons, although they had the gold to buy the weapons. Remember, they had the ability to buy the weapons because they had gold. But they were shut out of the European market of armaments. So Russia, after the Bolshevik Revolution, says, no, these weapons for the progress, for the sake of human progress, let them be made available. And the Chinese were the first to benefit. Then later on Vietnam and everybody. And we also later benefited. So we squared the issue of military asymmetry between Europe and Africa. This is the history of Zimbabwe. And the president took us on that chapter. But I also wanted to mention the contribution of the Russians in this vein because they are part of Zimbabwe's history. But we also, this is at the party level, at national level. But there's also this other aspect at national level where we go a long way back. For 800 years, Zimbabwe delivered Africa's most enduring and sustained civilization, which is the Great Zimbabwe Civilization. And for testament, you just need to go to those places which I mentioned earlier on. As you no doubt, all other African nations, civilizations, they build with straw, they build with pole, they build with dagger. Now, those are very, very prone to the vagaries of the weather, those three building elements. What the Zimbabweans do to show that they want to be permanently remembered, they went into the mountains and took granite, which came from the geological upheavals of the past and which has endured forever. They started burning it, pouring water and chiseling it, and making these citadels without cement. Because if cement had also been used, it probably would have collapsed itself. So you can imagine the engineering ingenuity which went on to make what great Zimbabweans are. And that's why the UNESCO has made it a heritage site. So it is befitting that as our president takes this country through the paces, this nation through the paces of what we could be, we go and pay homage to this place past at Great Zimbabwe, Kumasvingo, and honor the kings who made it possible. And by the way, where's my phone? To show that this was not an isolated, because we didn't write history, but sometimes other people wrote it for us. I've got a picture here. This is a picture from 16-something. This is a picture of King, can you read for me? My eyes are not so good.
Nyatsimba Mutota, King of Mutapa.
King Nyatsimba Mutota, King of the Mutapa. And do you know who commissioned this coin at that time? None other than the King of Portugal at that time. Why? Because they had come looking for gold. Like everybody else had been done in the past. You come to Zimbabwe looking for gold. Ma India wanted to Kushona land. Gold land, that's what Mashona. Ma Somali, they are here, they were here. Ndo wakapazare kuti Sofala, Kubaira, Somalis. Remember, this was all part of the Shona Great Zimbabwe Civilization. I mean, Great Mutapa Kingdom. The Iranians, if you go, what is this city on the Rovuma River? I'll tell you the name very soon. It's still there. The Iranians were there. They were trading with Zimbabwe. Zanzibar, the Arabs, they were trading with Zimbabwe. Indonesians, they came all the way trading with Zimbabwe. The Indians, I've told you. The Chinese were all here. Even the Turkish, they were all here. Egypt, they were all here trading with Zimbabwe. So this is our history, the history of a civilization which could be sustained for such a long time. And having this coin made in there was even a coat of arms designed by the Portuguese for the Munutapa Empire, for the Munutapa king at that particular time. We were engaged in global diplomacy because we were a trading nation, because we are a trading nation for a long time. So it's right and proper that our young people who are thought that history starts with the arrival of the British, it's not true. We have been around for a long, long, long time. And the president is right to take these young people down historical memory lane. You understand? Historical memory lane, so that as we aspire for the rightful place of Zimbabwe in the global affairs, we make reference to our past and get inspired. It's good to be inspired. And this is the whole purpose of the event. I want to say thank you to the President for thinking of hosting such an occasion so that as we get into the digital era, young people can understand the possibilities, the immense possibilities which this country has, which have been bolstered by our historical footprint, which UNESCO recognizes through the Great Zimbabwe as a global national heritage. So, on that good note of modernization, of going back to our history and the era of artificial intelligence, I drift to congratulate the President once again for making a major move which will change the lives of young people, which will change the lives of rural people, which will bring innovation to another level in urban areas. And what do I want to talk about? Starlink is in Zimbabwe. Starlink. Yes. You got the announcement, and it is the wisdom of the President in his cabinet, and I was there in his cabinet, when he said this must be done for the whole country, not for a particular individual corporate entity. Now he has made Starlink be available to all Zimbabweans. And his argument was very simple in cabinet. He asked it, I'm a technology buff, all of you know that. He asked it, kweyo Starlink yacho masata zvinombonzi chi? Ndikati Starlink chef masatellites adzikiswa zvekuti apa level yekuti kana vari pasi vanogona kusenzesa mafoni avo kuwana signal from a satellite. You don't need to go 30,000 feet, 30,000 meters into the sky again. Saka chinhu chakanaka kaichi. Ndikati chef chakanaka zvachose, saka chakutoita kuti vanhu vekumaruzevha vakwanisewo kuwana internet vasingamiriri matambo ePTC yakudhara kana mabase station enet 1 kana Econet. Imvura kana zuva rinongonaya pese pese muZimbabwe. Saka kana zvakadaro, I am the one who is been elected by the Zimbabwe people on their behalf. It is me who is going to license this technology. There was a lot of gnashing of teeth when the President announced himself this license. But by the way, that was also what Elon Musk wanted. He had been approached by several business people to try to cut a deal for their corporates. He rejected that path. He says, I want to engage with the Zimbabwe government. Don't listen to a lot of explanations of this and that or this or that, and a lot of ad hominem, homophobic attacks against some people, and I don't want to refer to who they are about that issue. Even family attacks about that issue. No, the family had nothing to do with it. The sons who are being made reference to had nothing to do with it. It was just attempted corporate greedy, which President smothered. And he took the decision on behalf of the Zimbabwe people. And now we have Starlink available. Look at how it is going to change this country. All this energy which the President is marshalling by his projects, which are all coming to fruition as we march to Vision 2030. They need communication. They need seamless link between the people, the government, and their president. Now we have an opportunity of mastering modern technology, harnessing it to make sure that it is digital inclusive. Can you imagine delivering the ability of seamless communications to a highly literate population, which is Zimbabwe? Highly literate. Iye zvino library avhurika pese pese, there will be a library. Kwete library emabhuku, library epa websites. It means information can be gathered and processed at local level. It means grandiose opportunities for our young people and for our population. So thank you, President, for bringing this technology in the most appropriate of manner to the Zimbabwe people. Mavanyaradza vese vanongogwauta vachitaura zvemanga-manga, rwendo runomavarova nechematseka nzungu nenyaya yenyu yeStarlink. Congratulations, Comrade President. I thank you. This ends my presentation today. It's always known that. We also had our intelligence. We could have made a lot of noise about that, but we understood the challenges of South Africa's transition to independence. They did not fight to the extent which we did, so their state had go through the processes of being transformed. So along this way, there may have been leakages or there may have been weaknesses in the South African state system at that particular time. And with the historical preponderance of the West, they were in attempts at manipulating the new state of South Africa against even the wishes of the ruling party, against the majority. You can see it has always been the case that South Africa's opposition talks as if Zimbabwe is still Cecil John Rhodes' country. I last time made an allusion to the Cecil John Rhodes syndrome. Everybody who is on the payroll of the dark forces which don't want African process in South Africa is given a microphone to say something about Zimbabwe. Everyone in South Africa who is on the payroll, they've got enough issues which they could be talking about their own country. But those who are in the payroll, once they get a microphone, they are told, you get the microphone on condition that you say something bad about Zimbabwe. So these are the challenges which were faced, and I'm glad that former President Mbeki, a cadre of the liberation struggle, is now coming out and opening the can of worms and pointing straight finger at our opposition. Remember, our opposition has also been always attacking Mbeki. He should do this. They want Mbeki to be the Governor General of Zimbabwe. They have no respect for the territorial boundaries between the two countries. The ANC should do this about Zimbabwe. We used to host the ANC here, and they would go back and say, they are being told to become your governors in Zimbabwe. We will not do that, because that's why earlier on I made a reference to acquiring a political soul during the National Liberation Movement, when we shared camps in Tanzania, Angola, Zimbabwe, Mozambique, Namibia, South Africa. So we have a political soul. So this is what Mbeki is riding upon, to expose the opposition. By the way, the opposition has no roots except those of which it has been given by the West. They don't have any roots. That's why they've splintered and fissured and disappeared. Now I don't even know whether there's anybody to accuse, because the opposition no longer exists anymore. I mean, there's somebody to accuse, but there's nobody to finger point it, because history has dispensed with them. Mazon, zvitatso zvako zvinozokubata even wafa wakumakuva waparara, unoona zvitatso zvako zvakuya zvifumurodzi, mabasa akaita ndehaya, mabasa akaita ndehaya. So this is the story which Comrade Mbeki is bringing out into the open. We know the dark forces which are at play, but like I said earlier on, our president is fixed on the windshield, where we are going. He is not fixed on the rear view mirror. So we are not going to make an issue about the countries which may have been behind the manipulation of our opposition. We definitely will continue to remind Zimbabweans kuti mavaona vanhu venyu veopposition ndo vaenda kutsvagirai kuti vana venyu vapondwe kuSouth Africa, kunzi zvikonzi South Africa ngaipindire muZimbabwe. Saka kana uine munhu akakuwara mazuva iwayo, kana une chawakaitwa, ziya kuti PO box inonzi MDC, ziya kuti PO box inonzi CCC. ndokwaibva zhowe rese. I'm speaking in Shona because this is real much more for us now, a domestic issue. We are not going to try to continue to globalize this issue. Like I said earlier on, we are not here to perpetuate gratuitous quarreling with the top regional and the top global powers of this world. What is happening now on the global stage in terms of the geopolitical shift, where Asia is the driver of the new energy revolution, where Asia is the driver of the food revolution, and Indonesia, vari kuda kufeeda vanhu 400 million nechikafu, vari kuda kuZimbabwe. These are the drivers of the new world economy, the middle class which is coming out of Asia. And Africa is a young population which has got opportunities to seize, to supply the goods and services which are now required in the new world economy. This is where we are focused. And there's a role to play by the original economic powers in the world. America, when I say economic capital, those who had an advantage of access to capital and who could then have excess capital to export America is there, you cannot take it away. Europe is still the leader in many aspects, though it is, trying to unite in many more ways than one. And then there are the Japan, they've always been there. We cannot take the role out of the one global stage. So we are not there to take issues with those countries about what may have gone wrong in their role in Zimbabwe in the past as they try to seek regime change. We are there to seize new opportunities with these countries because they remain a vibrant, important market for technology, for capital, for innovation, for management services, and most important, for markets. We need them. So this could have to point diplomatic fingers. As we know, because no basarawe bakaona pasadak. And why we do it? I only said good never no aburitswa. Everyone likes people to be free. I then call for people to be free. Takuto tukwa ku ZANU-PF mataure kuti never no vasununguke vasunungurwa. I thought ZANU-PF would have gone kudos for making that suggestion. But anyway, I emphasize we only call because ZANU-PF does not. We run the government through the president. Ministers are not answerable to this building. Ministers are not directly answerable to this building. They are directly answerable to this building through the president. So decisions about the administration of justice, they are made at cabinet by the president, not in the Politburo Bureau of ZANU-PF. I don't know press briefing Tuesday. Panobuda vamuswere vachipa press ndopatinoziva kuti zvabva isusu chedu ndechekuongorora tiri kuno kuti takapiwa mandate nevanhu zviri kuitwa here toitawo people's conference iri kuuya iyi ndo patinozosangana nemaministers ovabvunza kuti marksheet yenyu yezvamamuchiita isusu vanoita mamanifesto eparty vanhu vari kuti zvakati zvakati. That's why the people's conference is there to take note. We have an arm's length relationship with the cabinet. And that arm's length goes through the umbilical cord of our president. But at the same time, we are also free to express views on any particular issue. And when we express them, it doesn't mean we are giving directives. No, we don't. It's mischief to even allude to that. But that as it may, we are very happy with Wagaburitsko. We are always happy with Wagaburitsko. In any case, the event is Yakapera, so Wagaburitsko. I think you should be clarifying the debate to me. Because it's an ongoing, we are going to praise. Clarify what the debate is about. Anyway, what I know, because we are a democratic party, there's a constitution which was written with our president being a key drafter of that particular constitution. That constitution was supported by the two parties at that particular time. It was taken to the country through a consultative process, the most extensive and intensive consultation process, a COPAC. The final document came out. It was adopted by the two parties, and then there was a referendum about the constitution. And the Parliament of Zimbabwe passed that particular constitution. It is the operative document of the present Zimbabwe government, of which President Mnangagwa is the president. So he was involved at each and every stage of the drafting of this document. His mandate in 2023 was based on this particular constitution. And as a constitutionalist, he is true to that document, and he has made it plain that he will be true to that document. That's what the president has said. Otherwise, he departs from the constitution, and being a lawyer and a constitutionalist and a revolutionary, it would not be proper. Probably with the propriety that he was one of the key drafters. So that's his position, and that is also the constitutional position. But that is it may, there are others from outside of the party who have their own agendas who want to determine the course of which ZANU-PF should take. And if there's one thing which angers, which arouses the instincts of ZANU-PF, which really makes ZANU-PF starts having its feelers tweak, its ears tweak, like there is a insects start doing when there is an impending earthquake. It is the prospect of outside interference within the affairs of ZANU-PF and within the party. Ukadaro ZANU-PF, because you see, this is a party which lost so many people to be where it is today. It charted its own path. So it is very, very, very jealous of its independence and autonomy. So when some things begin to happen from outside of the party, it naturally revokes or invokes a reaction. As Einstein says, every action has got a reaction. So the people begin to say, this is what is going on, the people of the party. And then they say, maybe they want to look at instability in the leadership of the party. Then the people take refuge in the stability which they know and the performance which they know. These are the people, the membership of ZANU-PF. They are taking refuge in the leadership, the tried and tested leadership which they've seen delivering all the things which I was referring to the area on. They are protecting their sense of identity and the aspirations which they see being delivered of Zimbabwe becoming a prosperous country. So it's a debate. It's a debate. Some people, I was in Beijing, some people also, one lady spoke, tried to raise the issue, and the president was emphatic. I live by the document of the Zimbabwe Constitution. That's what his president says. I hope it answers you. But that as it may, it will be an ZANU-PF like, and it is not within ZANU-PF to say we should muzzle debate. No, let the ideas flower within ZANU-PF. And then eventually the president and the party will look at what is the best for Zimbabwe. I remember, by the way, when I spoke about the president and the West, I just want to give a brief perspective, because this is very important in this debate. You can imagine the trepidation if consternation of our allies during the struggle, the major allies were giving us weapons in Beijing and Moscow, Russia, at that time, Soviet Union. When we decided at Lancaster that we were going to go for the election for our transition to independence, the revolutionary parties before, they've just simply taken over power by revolution, never by election. But our president was central to that decision. He was one of the chief legal minds at Lancaster to say we accept the democratic process to be the arbiter of who is going to rule in Zimbabwe. We may have won the battlefield by bullet, but we will not win the political office in Harare by bullet. We will win it by ballot. Our president was part of that decision. Afterwards, he built an army. Remember, we built an army from three arms and two, of which two were liberation movements. He was the chairman of the defense committee at that particular time for the integration of the army. And a decision was made that Zimbabwe was going to use professional Western standards for our army. He was the part to that decision, our president. He is not somebody who can be branded as having any other interest as what is good for Zimbabwe. So for the Western countries who later tried to sanction him for being anti-West, they are not looking at some of these aspects of our history. We made decisions to buy armaments. Our Air Force was equipped with Western weapons initially. Even when there was sabotage of our Air Force, Kugweru, you don't know that by the former Rhodesian army, a third of it was destroyed. We still bought weapons from Britain. But later they were all sanctioned and we couldn't fly them, we couldn't get spare parts. So the hostility has come from the West, not from our president. You understand? So this campaign, insidious campaign against our president, it harks more to people who hanker for the past. They want a post-apartheid, post-neo-colonial, post-racist order in Zimbabwe. They want a caricature of a modern Zimbabwean state. That's what they want. Our president aspires for a rightful place for the Zimbabwean nation, where we are unfettered by encumbrances from the wishes of other nations. That's what our president stands for, nothing more. He is prepared to stretch his hand, like I gave you the 2 case studies, or the 3 case studies in the past, to embrace Zimbabwe. He's been part of those decisions to embrace the West, even when it was not fashionable by our other allies who may have been with us during the liberation struggle. But he says it is important. So we like it when the West starts moving from its position of unprovoked hostility to Zimbabwe. We have not provoked anybody. So we want the West to move to a situation where sanctions can be fully removed against our president. And the American business people, who are some of the best in the world, can compete with the Chinese who are here, Indians who are here, Indonesians who are coming, Turkish who are coming. We just want the best business people to come to Zimbabwe. Because if the best business people come to Zimbabwe, they work with the most competent African labor force. There's no labor force as organized and structured and as competent and as disciplined as the Zimbabwean one on the African continent. And because it is educated, it has got this capability to turn capital into profit in the shortest possible time. Saka businessmen epasino vari Emirates ndege dzakazara, manyu airports esa akazara businessmen vari kuuya kuZimbabwe. Chadirwa shuga chinu chinodzi Zimbabwe. This is where we are. I just thought I could digress a little bit and give that our president is out to make sure that Zimbabwe gets its best possible deal for the development of Zimbabwe. Allow that. I hope it answers. Any other question?
One last question.
Towards the end of your remark. Because the moment you bring racism, the moment you bring the element of racism, it offends the ethos of this party. No, I'm answering. When you were speaking, did I?
This is your answer.
This is my
answer.
Let him speak. You will now want to quarrel with me. Yes, I gave you a chance to answer. The ethos of this building, this party, is non-racial. When we went to war, saka mandu dzenyu chii toti varungu ana chitepo nonatongogara woti aiwa mandu dzenyu iracism, mandu dzenyu havasi varungu. I remember, just for memory's sake, there was a girl who was a jazz singer from Mbare, akafa pahondo yepachimoyo, ainzi Sekai, I think Takaedza, for hondo time timuchazotida. She's the one who gave you the song Nonza Achitepo Kufawachi. That's not a Harare Mambo song. That's a song from this girl. Dokumbaro Agasara Pachimoyo. She was a jazz singer, and she wrote one song because we are internationalists. We want to free the people of the whole world. And the party Anatongogara and Wakuru Agada tinoda kumbosunungura vanhu vekuZimbabwe zveinternationalism, socialist internationalism izvo. It means kuti tapedza yedu muda kuti tumai futi monorwa dzimwe hondo kune dzimwe nyika. We are not like so, and we are not racial. So when you bring issues of race in the manufacture of products, no. We as a party, we bulk away. We don't subscribe to that. So that's what I wanted to address. When you said white. No. White companies, white this, white this. Chinese are white, Americans are white, everybody is white. Now, they gave us weapons to fight, they are over to white. So if you start fighting white, you won't finish. You understand? So I want to dismiss the notion of race from the onset. Secondly, individuals who glory seek by making accusations which they have no competence to prove, we don't subscribe to that. I think that issue was sub judice at one time, and the courts in South Africa settled that issue. So the wisdom of the judges in South Africa, and these are learned men, they made a decision on this Rutendo Matinyarare you are talking about, South African judges. So who are we to start listening to the whimsical accusations of an individual whom we don't know why he is making those accusations? And what is his local standing? Mandate ya chambopiwa nani? Rutendo Matinyarare kuti ataure zvese. Haana ba mandate yese izvo kutaura. Tongoti mupengo wangotanga kufamba muroad achitaura zvakati nawo nanga. It's social media yazara kai. Tingapedze basa redu sema-reporters tichiti nema-spokesperson tichingoanza zvinhu zvangobuda pasocial media. Hatingazvipedze. Ndiwo unongonziwo kupenga kwevanhu vari kuita abuse social media, including that particular individual. He grants stance and talks about issues in an authoritative manner simply because he's got a loud mouth and a generous pen. But substance chaizvo mune zvavari kunyora hapana, and the judges in South Africa made a decision on that. And finally, lastly, these companies which he referred to, they are corporate citizens of Zimbabwe. They operate under what is called the Companies Act of Zimbabwe. Vatori ma citizens in Zimbabwe. You understand? So they are represented here. Nema companies are nema CEO nema chi. If they are, and they know how to comply with Zimbabwe under the Companies Act. If they've not complied, they should be taken up on that particular aspect. And just like you are a citizen of this country, if you do things which are wayward, the law takes its course upon you and the law enforcement agencies. These companies are corporate citizens of Zimbabwe. They are not, they may be foreign owned, in this one is a local owned, but they are corporate citizens of this country. They operate under the, it's like people are, hey, my China company has what? We don't look at companies as being Chinese. We look at companies as being companies who are corporate citizens of Zimbabwe. If you do certain things because of your country of origin, the law will take its course against you as an individual corporate entity, not as a collective branding of certain people. They are white, they are Chinese, they are this. We don't do things like that in this country. We are globalists. This building is built upon the foundation of a globalist outlook. That's why we could get weapons as young people from anybody, from everywhere. We didn't get it from Africans only. So we are very true as a party to that non-racial ethic tenet of ZANU-PF. So we don't subscribe again to that. Then finally, I told you about the laws. The laws actually bring regulations with the relevant bodies to administer these regulations about the products in Zimbabwe. It's an ongoing process. The Standards Association of Zimbabwe is there. It's one such entity. But there are various professional, independent organizations which are responsible for making sure that Zimbabweans get safe products and non-poisonous food and non-carcinogenic food. There are various organizations in this country. So if there are infringements by anybody, you take it to those organizations, and the police will investigate under the ambit of those organizations with the advice of those organizations. And where there is an infraction or infringement, a law will take its course, and the people are duly punished. But to use social media as a substitute for all these entities which I have talked to you, tochiita is assume role, because we never know where prejudice and bigotry comes in. You understand? And who may have sponsored that big prejudice and bigotry? What if somebody is acting on behalf of a competitor to a losing? I want to have products compete on the market. Waro attend not boss chakwa just kudi one evan. Wakuna accuse munu kuti chanenge chakadaiwo. Istopindira ipapo. Iwaro wapa market. Waro wapa msika. The democratic choice of currency has made it. Iwo akuenda kunoti wakunoti hanzi chinhu chanenge chakadaiwo hatidaroba. Anyway, that also brings me with there's been a lot of pressure on the ZIG. But the pressure is not about the fundamentals of the Zimbabwean economy. It's the pressure of those who, when I told you there are people who don't want Zimbabwe, who want Zimbabwe to have to become a caricature of a post-colonial, post-apartheid, post-racist, post-settler rule. They want a Zimbabwe which fails, because for them you can then cartoon the country, a cartoon Africa. They want a Zimbabwe as a caricature. So when Zimbabwe takes the bold stance to use gold, of which we have in abundance, which I refer to earlier on when I talk about the Munumutapa Kingdom, the reason why we could build cities like this, which we did, is because there was social stability, there was political stability. And the biggest disturbance to political stability in history, for those who study history, is inflation. In any country, if there's inflation, in any organization, in any society, in any civilization, eventually there's upheavals. That has been going on for 5,000 years. The economic issues of inflation are the ones which are the biggest threat to social, political stability in countries. Because there's the continuity of the Great Zimbabwe River, there was stability, and the stability is measured by a currency. And what was the currency which gave all these different places, regardless of their historical location and their time location? It was gold as a currency. So our president, in his wisdom, took advantage to restore gold as our currency. Because if they had added advantage with gold, we dig money. My US dollars, Zimbabwe, ask for America, American government. Young people are really mafojika. Kurungwe, the young people are good gold kumahaka. Though are good tipa my US dollars at now. So we are having a situation where in one side I have my US dollars. A chair whenever Zimbabwe. On the other side, the currency on the ZIG. Young, two. All these two currencies are mine. Then I cause inflation between the two currencies. I mean, what economics is that? What finance is that? There are people who are trying to manipulate the system, because the US dollars in the system, they are not a gift of the American government. No American government writes US dollars for Zimbabwe. Paneva 6 billion, 7 billion. In America, we go pay US dollar. The biggest suppliers of currency, hard currency in this country, I've told you. They are supplying 2 to 3 billion US dollars. Number two, Vanuanorima Forge, Urungwe, Kumashu West Kwangu, where 40% of the tobacco is grown. Never Kumarondera, never Kwarusape. Vanu supply the other 1 billion in US dollars. You know, the Forge cannot take it in US dollars. Diaspora, Yevana Zimbabwe, Wakafunda, Vakuti Wakanda into any labor market in the world. There's Excel. The end currencies in the hard currencies of those countries, particularly the US dollar. Musuno China president to take heads off to the diaspora another billion US dollars. Imari my US dollars are now. Now there's a movement administered na Vamushayavan. Public, there must be something wrong, because both of them are your monies. You understand? So there's an abuse of the system. I said I'm a technology person, but there's a need to, and this is not ZANU-PF, by the way, I'm speaking as a Zimbabwean. I'm going on microphone. I just believe that the president's inclination to say, let's just put a statutory instrument and make the ZIG the single currency of transaction is the best way to go. Because it removes all the arbitragers who are in between, who are trying to say, Mari, I mean, literally my right hand in my US, Irguruisana, in my left hand in my ZIG. But this is the Vava shoulders and wap. And this is the command when you bring young Iraq. How does it? It's not possible. You understand? It's not possible. So I just thought I would add that element. as a departure from your question. I hope I answered everything. Thank you.